Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you're watching this, this is a tone discussion of the Boston tone. I've been doing a lot of presets over the 2 years straight, almost 2.5 years now that I've been creating Boston presets and monkeying with them and adjusting them and changing them around. And just want to discuss about my findings, what I've experienced, my thoughts, and to set the record straight on certain misconceptions that seem to fly around a lot. And that has a lot to do with YouTube influencers and all these shills that you end up seeing online, especially social media, because there's always a financial mostly a financial or even an ego incentive for these people to blow their own horns about shit they don't understand or even know about. So they're going to act like they do. And if you've seen any of my recent Boston videos, my most recent one, I was talking about T-tops and all this other stuff because some asshat told me that I needed T-tops in order to get the Boston tone. And I don't need Gibson pickups to get the Boston tone. Tom Scholz took the Gibson pickups out of his guitars. Ace Frehley took the Gibson pickups out of his guitars. In fact, a lot of Gibson players took the Gibson pickups out of their guitars and put in other things. So, not a surprise. Anyway, enough of that kind of rant, but I made a video about, it's very rudimentary, I guess, about how electric guitars and pickups work. It's a brief, I'll give a brief overview of that. You've got basically three different types of pickups, and two of them aren't too off from each other. They are, but they aren't. You have single coils and you have humbuckers. So you have single coils and humbuckers, which are double coils. Single coils are the basic pickups. These are the first pickups that were created, and they're noisy. They tend to have this 60 cycle hum, and the humbuckers were created to basically cancel them out by using two single coils and putting them together to where they're at opposite, either side is at an opposite pole magnetically, and that cancels the hum. Seth Lover, I believe, was the person who created the first humbucker, but I'm not totally 100% sure of that. There's a lot of debate on that because it's the past. So I mean, do we really know what happened around 60, 70 years ago? No, not really. We only have what people told us and what's been recorded. But as a great quote was once said, history is written by those who are the most successful and victorious. So you've got single coils and humbuckers, and you have P90s, which are basically beefed up single coils. And those are the three pickups. Their sounds are different from each other because of the way they are. But things you'll see as time goes by, that's not really that hugely important. I don't want to go into great detail about pickup types. A lot of that can be changed in post-production. So pickup types are what they are. There's a video, I will link the video, my other video, in the description of this video and in the comments. And if you need any more details, search the internet, it's out there. But be careful. Don't get your information from a guitar store or somebody who has been sold their souls to a guitar store or company, because they will not be steering you straight. Case in point, a YouTuber whose name rhymes with Shuzuki Schwinn is well known as a PRS employee now and been getting money from PRS, and he swears up and down that tone wood's a real thing and that it changes guitar tone. No. Wood does not affect electric guitar tone, period. And the only way you'll detect any kind of a difference between tone of wood or anything like that is if you knock on it with your hands or like in the PRS demonstration, whatever. I don't want to get into the tone wood stuff. Well, that there's so many videos about that. Now, Boston tone. Sorry it took so long. I kind of meandered for 5 minutes about this, but what Tom Scholz said and didn't say. Tom Scholz is a man of many secrets. His signature tone was created. It was a passion of his, and he created it in the early to mid 70s in his basement in Watertown, Massachusetts. He didn't have all this fancy stuff. He had to actually create a lot of things. But Tom Scholz is an MIT graduate, and he's a genius, and he knew basically just about everything about electronics. So he knew how to create these things. He knew how to get what he wanted to, and he also did a lot of experimenting. So a lot of his stuff is just trial and error, like I do with my presets. He was asked about guitar tone, and he basically said it made no difference. He was asked. He said this was a Guitar Magazine, I believe, article, and was on the internet for a while, but I'm having a hard time finding it again. Or who knows, maybe the guitar companies made it disappear. But what was asked of him was how much of your signature tone comes from your guitar, and Tom Scholz said none. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great guitar. Gibson Les Pauls are fantastic. They work, they feel good in the hand, the whole 9 yards. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. And he also said, I can get my tone from any guitar. I've tested that out on this channel, and it's true. I've gotten the Boston tone with P90s. I've gotten the Boston tone with single coils. It's all in what you do with the preset. See, the thing is, what happens after your guitar is the most important. Okay, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So, like I said, I'm not going to get into the tone wood thing. If you have dog hearing, which people swear they must think they do, then you might detect something slightly, and I'm talking like very, 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 very slightly. But maple is not snappier, mahogany is not warmer. That's all in your head. And if you want to believe it, go ahead and believe it. But that's all there is to it. People convince themselves of a lot of things. They have their own biases, their personal biases. I mean, if they're a fanboy of Gibson, they love Gibson. If they're a fanboy of Fender, they love Fender. PRS, same thing. It doesn't matter what you're a fanboy of or a fangirl. And then their own personal beliefs, too. They have traditional beliefs that have gone for decades and decades and decades and decades. Like Gibson was the only one who created the Les Paul guitar. No, Gibson did not create the Les Paul guitar. It was presented to them in 1941 or 1943 by a man named O.W. Appleton. And it was rejected by Gibson, that single cut shape that we all see. It was rejected by Gibson because Gibson said, and I'm paraphrasing the quote here, we can never see anyone playing a solid body electrical guitar, is what they call it, electrical. So, yeah, they rejected Mr. Appleton's Les Paul design. It wasn't even called Les Paul. It was just a single cut design. And a little bit later, Bigsby came up with one for a performer. I can't remember the performer's name offhand, but this country performer, and it looked exactly like a Les Paul. And then, whoa, miracle of miracles, 3 years later, Gibson comes out with the Les Paul and then says it's theirs, which it wasn't. And it's never been, and it never will be. So, like I said, people have those traditions, and the traditions have been going for decades and decades and generation after generation. And then there's also peer pressure. Peer pressure is where people will sit there and they've got several of their friends play Gibsons or PRSs or Ibanez or Jacksons or whatever, what have you. And they're like, well, those are the only good guitars. So to not look bad amongst their friends and be ridiculed or stand out from the crowd, they'll get what everybody else gets. Now, back into what Tom Scholz said. Sorry if I kind of meander into things like that. It's just the way it is. So back to what Tom Scholz said and didn't say. He didn't say anything other than the mic placement is very important. He never said what speakers he used. He never said what mics he used. He just said, without getting the right mic placement, you're not going to really get the Boston sound to be very, very close. I mean, you might get in the ballpark, but not even. It's got to be, the mics have to be placed a certain way, in a certain spot on the speaker, and everybody's been guessing. People have been guessing over the years, and it's still a mystery. Tone chasers, people who have chased the Boston tone, have uncovered some of Tom's secrets through pictures and things very cleverly done by, I might say, where they would take pictures, or they would take some pictures and they would blow them up of what was on stage when Boston was performing live, and pictures of his studio, when they had pictures of Tom in his studio. They'd catch a little, oh, I know that device over there. Look at that device over there. Let me identify. And they will identify the device. Whether it was used or not, nobody really knows. Only Tom knows, and people who was working with him. But if it's a device that's there, that's just another piece of the puzzle that they can try. Tom also said something very interesting. And this kind of destroys a lot of the tone chasers that have figured that, just buy a Rockman, you don't have to worry about it, Or people who have bought not only the Rockman system, they didn't buy just the Rockman headphone amp, they bought the effector, or not the effector, the what is it called? There's so many different Rockman things. There's the distortion generator, and then there's a special equalizing system, and it has a name for it, and right now it just escapes me. But you can spend about $1,000 on Rockman stuff, because this stuff is so expensive. In fact, you'll spend probably over $1,000 now, because this stuff has been so overpriced and so expensive. Because Dunlop bought the company from Tom Scholes, but he took his designs with him, and they've screwed the pooch. I mean, if you go and you buy one of these guitar aces or bass ace or whatever, it does not sound like Boston. It doesn't sound even remotely like Boston tone. It's just basically a fancy distortion headphone amp, and that's it. That's all it is. And there are headphone amps that go way beyond that. So yeah, Dunlop dropped the ball with the Rockmans. Don't even bother with the guitar ace or the bass ace or the metal ace or the Fraley ace. They're just kind of worthless. I've seen people with them. I've tried them out. They suck. That's all there is to it. So what goes into my presets? Well, wait a minute. Before that, I kind of went on a tangent and didn't tell you the last part. Each Boston song, and this is something Tom said, each Boston song, to recreate them on stage the way they were recorded, he said he would need a different amp, configuration, everything, for each song. That's how different each Boston song is. So you will never get it exact. I don't care how much, Boston, Rockman, whatever stuff you buy, you're never going to get it exact. Why? Because each song has a different tone. I mean, it's not totally different, but it's slightly different, and those who know, those who are, guitar players and really, really concentrate on that Boston tone will know. But the layman, people who just casually listen to Boston, they'll never really be able to tell per se. Unless they're audiophiles and they've listened religiously over the years. They know every nuance. So, why do I do this? It's a puzzle. I love puzzles as far as I love problem solving. When I was I'm still a video game player, but when I started playing video games, my favorite video games were role-playing games, because you had to figure things out, and you had to figure out situations and stuff. And that's what I like to do. I like to figure stuff out, and I like to do it for myself. So I'm not going to sit there and buy a Rockman and all that other garbage that goes along with it and bankrupt myself into oblivion, maybe sell one of my kidneys to pay for it. I'm going to create the tone on my own, because that's who I am. I like the discovery. I like being able to. It's more of an accomplishment than just buying a solution. To me, at least. It may not be to you, but it is to me. Now, what goes into my presets? These are what I consider to be essentials for Boston Tone. 2 equalizers or more, which is very important. You got to have 1 equalizer before the amp and an equalizer after the amp at the bare minimum. When Tom made his Boston Tone, it was discovered by several people back in the early 70s or the mid 70s or whatever. When he was doing that, it was discovered on the internet later when they looked at pictures that he was using 2 amps and an EQ in the middle of those 2 amps. There was a plexi, then the EQ, and then another amp, which is more of a clean tone amp. And I don't know if he was using 2 plexis or whatever. There's so many details in that. So 2 equalizers, heavily important, because there's a 10-band equalizer or even a 7-band equalizer. At the end, you could use either one, 7 or 10 bands, after the amps, but before the cabs. After the effects, everything. You got to have that equalization. Very important. Good distortion. Yes, it's important to have great distortion, and you got to have a distortion that has it's varied. You can change the tone of the distortion. Remember, none of this happens at your guitar. This all happens after the guitar. You want a distortion that you can change or use different distortions, because one distortion is not going to do it. Not for Boston. Chorus. 1 chorus pedal at the bare minimum. 2 is what I've discovered recently has made a difference, and it's really weird. It gives the guitars kind of the guitar sound a really kind of otherworldly thing, an otherworldly kind of vibe to it. Compression, delay, reverb, very important. Tom's guitar tone was very compressed on the albums. I don't know how much of that was done in pre-production. I you know, as I said, I wasn't there, even though I lived 2 hours away when it was all going on. But there's a lot of compression, you can tell, and the delay and reverb, they kind of work together to create that kind of echoey sound. And then you got to have a doubler. Whatever doubler you can find, whatever works with you, whatever sounds good, because Boston, when Tom recorded those albums, those guitars you can guarantee were doubled. Those guitars were recorded, they were double tracked. And a good doubler will mimic the double track instead of you going through it. You can double track it yourself, that's entirely up to you. But a doubler works very easily, and it's problem free. You know, it's not totally problem free, but it's a lot simpler idea than going back and redoing the guitar tracks over and over and over again. Kawasa, who makes the Amplification 360 amp sim that I use here and there, they made an excellent article with a lot of ideas about Boston Tone and what goes into it, and the link will be in the description, and it will also be in the comments. Now, I will reiterate here, tones and presets will never be exact. I don't care what band it is, I don't care who makes these tones and presets, I don't care who does it. There are several reasons why. 1, we are not the performers themselves. I'm not Tom Scholz, I'm not Jimi Hendrix, I'm not Jimmy Page, you're not either. So you are never going to be exactly like them. You're never going to sound exactly like them. Tone, a lot of it, you know, it really starts, the source is the guitar player themselves. It's not the guitar, it's the player, and I've been saying that for a long time. You know, whether I believed it or not, what I was saying, I finally just surrendered to it in this past year and said it's the player and not the guitar. And I've gone through a multitude of guitars to find that out. It's the player, not the guitar. That's who makes it. And then what happens after the guitar is much more important. Way more important. Now, Scott Grove made a video about this, and I'll put the link in the description. Scott Grove with Groovy Music Lessons. I'll put the link in the description and in the comments. 2, we don't have the actual equipment that these people used. We're just using a digital recreation of his equipment. And even if you pay money to an extortionist online, a rip-off artist who's going to freaking overcharge you for Rockman gear, you're still never going to sound like Boston. You're never going to perfectly sound like that. It doesn't matter. It's not exactly the same stuff. This is just the stuff that was allowed for commercial consumption. Okay? All that stuff. You know, the distortion generator, the effector, or whatever they call that thing. All that stuff, that's made for commercial production. You're never going to have exactly what Tom has in his house, and you'll never have the combination, because you see, he's ridiculous about how much stuff he puts behind the band while they're performing. There's so much misdirection going on there, it's ridiculous. So you're never going to know exactly what goes into it all, and you can't buy your way out of it. You buy a Rockman, you can get past it with just regular people who don't know any better. But people who really know the Boston tone, they know you just can't just buy a Rockman and call it a day. You know, drop the ego, drop the ideas, drop the misconceptions. No, it's much more nuanced than that. So, let's see. Going down my list here. And a lot of what you hear in the final product, and I mean everything. You know, we're talking not just Boston, but every album you've ever listened to. All of what you hear, all of it, was adjusted during the mixing, the original recording and mixing, and in post-production. Albums don't just get recorded, you know, into a microphone and then it's just put out after everything's equalized, you know, as far as volumes between each thing. No. There's a lot of things that happen afterwards. There's doubling. There's compression. There's alteration of tone. There's all sorts of stuff that's happening that's going into making that album sound like it is. And then it's all in the hands of the producer, and if the band's producing along with the producer. So, no matter what presets you create, no matter what you do, it's never going to be exact. Don't look for it. You're not going to get to it, because a lot of that stuff is, in fact, all of it, is altered at the mixing board and in post-production. So it's not going to be exact. Even the live stuff is altered at the mixing board. That's why they have these huge trucks outside of concerts, or even inside of concerts. These huge trucks with tons of mixing boards while these bands are playing live. It's because they're trying to recreate that album situation live. And it's never totally exact. You listen to an album, you listen to a live performance, no, it's not exact. And it never will be. And artistically, it shouldn't be. So there we go. And where am I at? 3, 4? I'm at 4, I think. I don't know, whatever. I'm not even going to number them anymore. Guitars and pickups are a very small part of the equation of tone. Very small part. It's the guitar player. It's what they do after the guitar. Wood, pickup choices, pickup brands, all that other hullabaloo. Way too much importance is put on that. And it's fostered by influencers and shills and people who claim they're not shills. It's funny because the shills thing came up a few months ago, and the people who were the most vocal about denying the fact that YouTubers, that a lot of YouTubers are shills, were people that are shills themselves. And a lot of them were in music stores. It's like, I'm not telling you to buy an expensive product because the company told me to. Yeah, bullshit. People like Bobby and his Guitar Dungeon and other ones, you know, that are bought off. Yeah, there's so much bullshit that goes on social media, it's ridiculous. So, moving right along, I'm starting to get long-winded here. I've gone past that. But anyway, if you're still here, thank you for listening. I'm not over yet, and that's not done yet, but thank you for getting this far at least. So, like I said, guitars are a very small part of the equation. Guitars aren't that important. Brands, wood, pickup brands, pickup types, the whole 9 yards. A lot of that can get changed in post-production, and what is most important is you and what you do after the guitar. After the guitar. So that's all there is to it. Case in point, my Boston tests that I've done. It's been on a variety of guitars. And honestly, I just did recently, I did the same preset with 2 different guitars, and they sounded near exact. That's all there is to it. It's what I've done after the guitar and what I do while I'm playing. That's it. Pickup types, pickup brands, nothing. None of that stuff matters. You might get a little more clarity out of one as opposed to another. That's all there is. And most people don't even notice that. So, in summary, we finally made it to the summary. Tom Scholz said he can get his tone with any type of guitar. And he was right. Absolutely right. I tested the theory on this channel. The videos are out there on the channel. Just search through the channel and they're there. I got Boston with single coils. I got Boston with P90s. I got Boston with humbuckers. And all different types of humbuckers. All different types of magnets. I have Alnico 2s. I have Alnico 5s. I have ceramics. And magnets don't make a big difference. I mean, they do in certain kind of clarity. But really, that's a personal preference thing. And it's stuff that most people won't even hear. Only we hear it, because we as guitarists, we're super tuned to this. You know, if you know to look for something, you know it's there. And you'll hear it. But other people who are just like, oh, I love Boston, they're cool, they won't hear it. Okay? So, just don't let people sit there and tell you what to buy. And tell you how to spend your money. Spend your money the way you want. You want to buy an expensive guitar, go buy an expensive guitar. You want to buy a budget guitar, go buy a budget guitar. You want to buy a Gibson, go buy a Gibson. Fender, same thing. PRS, same thing. All these guitar companies, buy whatever the hell you want. But don't ever delude yourself into thinking that one brand is above another brand, or that guitars are more important than they are, because they're not. That'd be like saying your telephone, the receiver on your telephone is the most important part, and it's what makes the phone work. No, it doesn't. You know, they were talking the old style telephones, like the little rotary ones, and the ones that had a bass part, and then they had the set with receiver, which is just a microphone. It's not. So, there it is. So guitar types don't matter. You can have Les Paul, you can have a Strat, you can have any shape guitar, you know, Flying V, shaped like Naked Lady. I've seen those. They're really weird and kind of disturbing. And then there's all sorts of different kinds of guitars. And it doesn't make a difference. The wood doesn't matter. None of that crap matters. The fretboard material, stainless steel frets. The only thing cool about stainless steel frets is that they last longer. You know, you're not gonna make dents in them the way you would make with other ones. So you don't need to refret as much. Probably, if at all, who knows. But, you know, people love to delude themselves about stuff, and a lot of it has to do with ego. A lot of it has to do with marketing people and social media influencers, who I call shills, because that's what they are. Social media influencers are shills. People who run music stores and have social media channels like on YouTube. Yes, you're a shill. You have a music store, you run a YouTube channel. Yes, you're a shill. You are shilling your products. That's all there is to it. You're selling your products. You are there to convince the people to buy your products, regardless of the quality of your products. As long as the price is at a certain point where you get a profit, that's what it is. And don't let these people that run music stores tell you, oh, I'm an unbiased source. Bullshit. You're not an unbiased source. You are there to get my money, or their money. And the best way to get the most of what's in their wallet, what's in your wallet? My hand, because I'm a YouTube influencer. That's what's in your wallet. But anyway, there it is. So remember the basic building blocks of Boston Tone: 2 EQs, speaker, mic, choice and placement. You know, specific speakers make a difference. Mic placement makes a difference. Mic type makes a difference. Chorus, delay, reverb, which is the standard stuff. Distortion, and you got to have your doubler. And that makes the Boston Tone. So there you go. So it's kind of a rant, kind of a whole thing. It got to be longer than I thought it would be, but hey, you know, life goes on. If you got this far, I am very, very grateful, and I congratulate you on putting up with my meandering and putting up with listening to me just ramble on sometimes and go off on tangents. Links are in the description about the guitar myths and stuff, and the Scott Grove video, and the Kawasa article on Boston Tone. The links are in the description. They're also going to be in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you got this far, thank you even more for watching. And have a great week, day, month, year, whatever, in these crazy times in this clown world we're currently enduring. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.